Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host, Yeukai Kechidori.
Awesome, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for joining us here today. Let me ask you a real question, and I hope you can answer this maybe loudly or not loudly. What is the number one thing that stops you, perhaps as a business owner, or perhaps as a mom, as a dad, or as as a teacher, whatever your vocation is, from achieving what you truly want to achieve? Have you got the answer? Well, many people tell me that not knowing what to do, but when you look at it very closely, there's so many answers, so many places where you can get that information. What I've discovered over the last 6 to 7 years, one thing that has stopped me, maybe to begin with, and many others, is not being able to learn fast, not knowing how to learn from all these sources, apply what I learned today and see the results. Well, if you are like me and many other people, you're in for a treat today because my guest, Mattiske, has discovered a way that you can apply today to learn fast, to retain information, and be able to apply it when you need that information. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's incredible. I know it's really early there in Australia, but we are grateful for your dedication to join us here at such very ungodly hours. Someone once said to me to be on this show today. Awesome.
It's great to be with you.
That's great. So, Catherine, for those who are yet to discover your work, do us a favor and let us know who is Catherine, maybe first of all, and how you got to be doing what you are doing right now, helping people like me and business owners learn fast.
Well, I started off as a computer trainer back in the 90s when Microsoft Office first came out and everyone went to computer training because there was no such thing as doing it at school. All adults in business really engaged in computer training, and it was part of the world's shift into PCs. And that was me. I was there training Excel, Word, PowerPoint, and I did that for a few years. And then I thought, it was interesting because I would see the differences in how some people really latched on and got it, and others, it was just so difficult for them. And so I thought, that's not okay. Why is it that I can have such variance in my groups every day? And I was training 5 days a week doing this. So I saw a lot of people come through my training courses. And then I started to realize that some of the things that I was doing as a trainer was having an impact on people who thought they couldn't do it.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, I need to do that more often. So I kept doing the things that worked more often. And then someone said to me, how do you do what you do? And I had no real clue.
Right.
Fast forward 30 years, that's what I've been trying to work out. How do you answer the question, which I call 100% to the power of 3, which is how do I get 100% of my participants to 100% of the learning objectives that we want to train 100% of the time? That's the question that's really driven my entire professional career.
I love that because, for that question, you've gone on to write 31 books, and your latest release is called Unlock Inner Genius, Power Your Path to Extraordinary Success. Before we dive into our conversation here, tell us about this particular book because it is getting so much traction.
It's getting a huge amount of traction because, Yeukai, I've been deep in corporate in the US and in Europe. That's been my client base in very large Fortune 100 companies working with their learning and development teams. And someone said to me, you need to take this system, which is ID9 Intelligent Design, and make a version for everybody, because everybody, regardless of whether they're in a Fortune 100 company, whether they're running a small business, whether they're a mum, a dad, a teenager, the one uniting thing that all of us have on this planet is we need to learn things. And so when I was kind of challenged by this person to do that, I said, that's really impossible. This is a whole corporate mechanism that I've built. It's tools and templates for corporate. And then I started to think, hang on, I can actually do this. So I took all of the corporate knowledge that I knew and repackaged it in a really friendly, accessible way to say, how do you do two things? One, learn fast. And two, once I know how to learn fast, communicate in a whole new, better way. The upshot of that is what I've discovered is that people who are on this Unlock Inner Genius track create a better you. So now that's what I'm thinking, is that if you can learn faster and take on board more information quicker, and you can communicate and iron out all these miscommunications that we have, you know, not all of them, that'll never happen. That's a dream state, right? But if we can start to iron out these communication issues that we have with people, it makes a better you. And people have just, it's been amazing. Amazing. I don't know why I went into corporate. I should have just done this 30 years ago, but I didn't know enough. I just didn't know enough. It's taken me all this time to work all this out.
Well, I'm glad that you've come into our world of entrepreneur to help us learn these things. Let's dive deep into our conversation here. For anybody who is looking to learn fast, in your opinion, knowing what you know now, what would you suggest they do first, or perhaps the very first step for them to take in order to get there?
I've lived the life of an entrepreneur. So I started my business 26 years ago. And really, I think the number one thing, as I look back over all my time in business, the number one thing that people need to know is, how do I learn personally? And everybody has a different nuance of their own unique preference of learning. Now, there's no such thing as one learning style. That's really an 80s concept that's now gone. But we have preferences of the way we like to do two things. One, take in information, and that's into our brain. So we all use our five senses to do that, fact. But some of us have different preferences around the way we most efficiently take that information in. So some people might say, I love learning via podcasts, and that's where you come in, Yeukai, right? So all these people that are subscribing to you, they're loving it, the fact that they can really absorb information that way. But you might have listeners on your podcast that actually that's not their preference. Their preference is maybe to be going to webinars or reading books or actually physically doing things. The first thing to understand is, what is my sweet spot when it comes to taking in information? And then the second thing is, how do I process that information in my head? What's going on 24/7 in my brain to process information? And in a learning situation, if you can crack your own code to say, where is my sweet spot? Then what happens is two things. One, you know your mechanism of when you're in a learning situation, when you're Googling something, when you're a formal learning program, when you're listening to a podcast, when you're reading a book, whatever you're doing, when you know that secret code for yourself, you say, okay, regardless of how this information is coming to me, I know my way, which is the best way for me to absorb that information. And then I know the best way I process that information. Those two things equals speed. If you can crack that code, that equals learning speed. And I see it day in, day out. All day, every day, I see people doing this.
I love that. You simplify this. I remember when I started learning, because I learn fast from listening audio, recording audio books. I go through audio books faster, and I even retain more than when I sit down to read a book. It's fascinating. But for those, Catherine, perhaps, who haven't discovered what is their learning sweet point, like you're mentioning here, how do you have any strategies for them to identify which is the best way for them to learn, and how fast can they process things?
So that's why I created Inner Genius. So when I wrote the book Unlock Inner Genius, I also created an online profile, and that's a series of questions with a super complex algorithm behind it to actually determine the outcome. And in order to package that up so it's really easily understood, I created 12 archetypes of learning.
Right.
So you would go through the profile, answer the questions, and what pops out the other end is your learning archetype, and it's with lovely symbols for each archetype that have deep meaning to the symbols. We then give you tools to use and things like Spotify playlists and Alexa skills and all the things, like a whole package of tools that you can use in your daily life so that you can actually not only know what that learning preference is, what your inner genius is, but then tools to help you go that next step and then use that in your everyday life.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was on your site earlier on in getting ready for this, and there is this place where they can find out. Would you share with my listeners here, Catherine, where they can take that test so that they can find out more about this?
Yeah, so you'll find the profile on innergeniusnow.com. Innergeniusnow.com is the site to go to. If you get lost, I'm sure that you'll put that on the show notes, or contact me via LinkedIn or however you need to, and we'll just make sure that you've got that for you.
I love that. You know what? I'm true behind this, because the faster you learn, the faster you process what you're learning, the faster you get to the desired goal or desired result that you want. Because anything that you want to achieve, somebody has already achieved that, and perhaps they have created a blueprint which you can just follow. But if you're slow in learning, or if you don't know how to process that, it is going to take you forever. So I'm glad that you're pointing this one out as as the steps to getting there. In your opinion, what will be the next step? Perhaps you've found out all this. Is there any steps to follow for them?
Yeah, so what happens is that people do their inner genius profile, right, and they come up with their archetype, and then they realise, they have this sharp realisation 100% of the time that, oh my goodness, everyone around me is different to me. Right. So they have different archetypes. So it might be someone in their business is different to them. It could be their family, their friends, their children, their customers. They've all got these different archetypes. So now what? So that was going to be just the profile was going to be the end of the book. And then someone said, what about people that are different? And I went, okay, back to the drawing board. I need to do this next piece now. And this next piece is the most important piece, is how do you communicate with people who learn differently to you? And we've all been the recipient of that. We've all been in a situation where we've been in a learning situation, and you're sitting there and you're going, I just don't get this. I just don't get it. It's just too hard. Everyone else around me seems to be getting it, but me. What is wrong with me? Well, it's because the person who's communicating to you probably has a different archetype to you, and the people around you are probably different to you. So if we put this into a business context, if you're just living in your world of your archetype, which we are unknowingly, even if you haven't done the profile, we all still have this archetype hidden beneath the surface. And then you realise that, how do I communicate, for example, to customers who potentially have all different archetypes to me? And think of it, Yeukai, as speaking languages. So let's say that imagine that my natural mother tongue language is Spanish, and imagine that your natural language is Italian. So I'm speaking Spanish all day, and you're just nodding away, lovely, going, I have no idea what she's talking about, but I'm just going to act interested here. And then all of a sudden I say a Spanish word that you recognise, and you go, oh, okay, I got one word. And it's exactly the same as talking in your archetype, because we actually have a language that when you unlock this inner genius profile, you go, I use these words all day, every day. I didn't even know it. And then you realise that other people are using different words. And so how do you actually make that translation? I call that a translation bridge, right, where instead of me talking Spanish and you talking Italian, that all of a sudden I can spot that, oh, Yeukai is speaking Italian. Okay, I'll switch to Italian. So I just start speaking in Italian, and all of a sudden you come to life and you get it. Well, it's exactly the same as with inner genius archetypes. So my archetype is a futurist. That's what my symbol is, and that's what my archetype is. And your archetype will be something different. But it's my job to make life easy for you. If you are my customer and you're not a futurist, if you're something else, an energizer, a decryptor, a cartographer, another one of these archetypes, I need to be able to communicate to you in your way. Because if I do that, you're going to take up that information way quicker. You're going to be way more attracted to what I've got to say. I'm going to be way more influential. You're going to listen to me more. You're going to respect me more. You're going to trust me more. All the things that we want because I'm speaking your language. And you go, wow, that Catherine Mattiske, she's just like me. Well, maybe I just know how to communicate with you.
Absolutely.
So that's how it works. And this translation bridge is really the key thing.
In fact, it decides how fast you can achieve your goals. I can give an example in my own world. When I'm speaking to my fellow business owners, I speak in a certain way. When I'm speaking to my team, I speak in a certain way. I adjust to mirror whoever I'm communicating. And I find that among many business owners who have learned this skill that we're talking about here, that they will be a different person. They've got this chameleon effect. Talking to this one, it's like, did I just witness that? It's because they've mastered the art of translating or communicating effectively with, the recipient or whoever they're communicating. I love what you've just shared with that. For those who perhaps are finding it difficult, Catherine, to internalize this or apply this, do you have any perhaps one or two tips that you can share with?
Well, there's a tool that I give you as part of the profile. I've created what is called an inner genius wheel, and it's a template where you plot out your communication. Let's say you're doing a presentation, let's say you're writing an email, doing a report, a project update. And this inner genius wheel is a communication canvas where you plot out what you want to communicate, but in a very structured way. And that structure will hook in all 12 archetypes.
Wow.
So in one presentation, if you're doing a presentation to a group or you're writing an email and you don't know the archetype of the other person, or you don't know the archetypes of this entire group, which you probably won't if you're going in, let's say you're doing a sales presentation, you won't know who's on the other end of that call. You don't know their learning preference. And maybe you're not skilled yet to spot it. I can spot it in an instant, but that takes years and it's hard work. But maybe you don't know that yet. So I've created a tool where as you're planning, you use this tool and you plot out, I'm going to connect in this way, I'm going to give the detail this way, I'm going to do all of these things, and then create your presentation. Or just before you send that email, go back to that tool and say, have I got all of those points in? Because regardless of who's on the other end of that communication, if you've used this tool, you'll hook in everybody, regardless of who shows up.
I love that tool. It's a proper cheat sheet. Can you share again, where can people get this tool so that they can begin to learn? Because I can see how that can shortcut anyone's success, perhaps journey, so that you get to results faster. Where can they get it?
Yeah, so go back to that same website, innergeniusnow.com, and you'll see if you do the profile, then once you unlock your own archetype, we send you into what we call the Inner Genius Vault, and you'll see an entire shelf of all of these documents, and that communication canvas, that Inner Genius wheel, is on that shelf. And if you need help to use that tool, reach out. We've got coaches and support people ready to help you. And if you want to, send us one of your presentations. Send us a presentation that you've done and say, can you take a look at it? What am I missing? Sharpen it up for me. Happy to do that. Yeukai, I've been in business for a long time, a really long time. And I think sometimes I'm kind of in the Mother Teresa phase of my career where I'm just giving away my knowledge, because I think if someone can use what I've learned, then that makes me a happy person. That fills my cup. It fuels me. So if you're listening to this and you've got a presentation that you've been giving and you've been thinking, it's not really sharp enough, send it to me and I will take a look at it. And people go, really? Will you do that? It's like, yes, I will do that. Take me up on that. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to help.
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the reasons we reached out to connect with you, because of your generosity with your knowledge. Listen, if you're joining us perhaps for the first time, you're in the right place, because what we are sharing with you right now is what is actually working, something that you can apply in your business, apply in your life, and see tremendous results in what you're doing. Catherine, let's talk to business owners for a moment. Knowing what you know now, about learning and being able to communicate effectively. And what is the number one stumbling block for those people who perhaps have got, a head knowledge of what you've talked about, but they're not living it? What is the main obstacle, and how can they get over that so that they can begin to see the results of this whole process?
I think for me, from my perspective, from my own experience as a business owner and from the business owners that I talk to, it's this feeling of overwhelm.
Right.
Overwhelm with new technology that's coming out, new information. There's a guru a minute coming out saying you should follow my marketing process, my business process, my this process, my that process. It's just this feeling of this tsunami wave of information that's coming to us. I don't know if it's a 2021 thing, whether it's a 2022 thing that we're going into, whatever it is, that's how I feel. That how do you navigate through that? And then out of that, you kind of pick up the pieces that you already know and do the best you can. And with the people that you've got on your team. And some people don't have people on a team. They're just by themselves. And that feeling of, trying to work through and ascertain the best path forward, I think is really, really hard for people. And I think that one of the biggest stumbling blocks is if you have a team of people working with you in your business, is how do you get them on the same page? And I have business owners coming to me and saying, Catherine, we've lost our purpose. We've lost our strategy with the pandemic. Everybody's off. They're just in survival mode, whatever. They're coming out of that now. How do we actually come out bigger, better, stronger, more committed to our purpose and driven? And I think with that overwhelm, it's around cutting through to say, if I can work with that overwhelm faster and to discern out the pieces that matter the most.
Right now.
And put your energy where it's having the biggest impact, as opposed to, I call it kind of faffing around the edges on things that I don't really need. Because there's a whole lot of B and C priority tasks that are unimportant. They're not urgent, to use the that old adage of the 7 habits of highly effective people. What is it that is really important to me? Focusing on that. And then saying, how do I cut through that quicker? How do I get my brain into the game where I'm really focused? So at the end of the day, I have a business life that I'm happy with, my business is flourishing, and I'm actually a nice person to my friends and family. I think it's kind of basic, isn't it? That's how I see it, but the overwhelm right now, I've never experienced anything like it. And I've lived through the beginning of the computer era, which it was completely overwhelmed in that era of the 90s when all that technology was coming out. But now it's a circus.
Wow. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. We are coming toward the end of our time together here, Catherine, and you are doing an incredible job adding value to our community. I truly appreciate that. There's one question that I hear over and over and over again, and it is, how do you help people that perhaps seemingly are different from you? How do you bridge that gap with the people who are different from you, especially if you're a business owner?
Yeah, and that's where we come back to those different archetypes. If you feel like you're speaking one language and your customers, your staff, your team are speaking another, then something is wrong with the way you are communicating. You've got to look in the mirror. There's no such thing, I don't believe, as difficult people. They're just different to you. And I think they're the key words, Yeukai, that you said. What do I do with people who are different to me? Step number 1, learn to speak their language. Learn to speak in their archetype. Communicate with them their way, not your way, their way. So discover how you work first. That's step number one. Then discover that translation bridge. How do I speak to people who learn differently to me? Once you can unlock that, you'll see that person flourish. You'll see that team member who you think, oh my goodness, I can't believe they even have friends and family. How does that happen? You know, like, oh my goodness, they are just useless in life. Why are they not doing this? Why can't they meet that deadline? Why don't they show up? All these frustrations, I have them as well. I'm in business. I have a team. I have these same frustrations. And I go, stop. They're just different to me. Let me find out their sweet spot of how they work. How do they learn? How do they communicate? Okay, I'll do it their way. When you can do that, they just come alive. They go, oh, you want me to do that by that deadline? Okay, got it. And off they go and do it. It's like this miracle comes over them and you go, I've been so frustrated with you for years or months or weeks or days. Oh, I've cracked the code. It's amazing.
Love that. Absolutely love that. You know, when you figure out how to communicate with people from the way they like and appreciate to be communicated, you're onto a winner. You literally get the results that that book talks about. You know, the How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. You actually get it. You know, people begins to become your friends. You can influence people. It truly is amazing. And I'm glad you're pointing this out, Catherine, as well. Catherine, for those who want to carry on learning from you, where is the best place they can find you?
So for me personally, look in LinkedIn and come to my profile, Catherine Mattiske on LinkedIn. And if you want to meet with me, just send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll send you my calendar. Let's have a virtual coffee and we'll meet on Zoom and we'll have a chat about what's happening with you and how I can help you there. If you want to go into that profile, go to innergeniusnow.com, open up that profile and start answering those questions and think about when you're doing that profile, do it as you truly are, not how you want to be, not this fictitious version of yourself, but how you truly are right now. So answer those questions really honestly. Then you will unlock that archetype and then start delving into all those materials as a result of it.
Love that. Absolutely love that. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to know more how you can learn fast, how you can communicate effectively, you now have a mentor. You have got a coach, somebody who's been helping other people for over 31 years. So you can be assured that you are going to learn one or two things from there. As we round up our communication here, think of one or two things today that you've learned from Catherine, from this conversation that you can implement right now. If it is me, I'll be going straight to that website and get that profile done immediately so that I know what is my archetype. So I want to encourage you to do exactly the same thing. And if you've got any question, reach out to the team or just reach out directly to Catherine on LinkedIn or Facebook or any of these places. Remember, this journey is even better when you do it with others. Catherine, once again, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much. It was great to be with you.
It was awesome. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, live well, live with passion. Know that the best is truly yet to come. Goodbye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.